Imagine being so wealthy that when you take a vacation, you accidentally crash the economy of every country you visit. Imagine having so much gold that you give it away by the handful just to be polite, causing inflation that lasts for over a decade. Imagine being so rich that 700 years later, people are still trying to calculate exactly how much money you had. This isn't fiction. This is the true story of Mansa Musa, the 14th century king of Mali, who was quite possibly the richest person who has ever lived. And most people have never even heard his name. To understand Mansa Musa, you first need to understand where his wealth came from: the Mali Empire in West Africa. In the early 1300s, while Europe was struggling through the Middle Ages, the Mali Empire was thriving. It controlled the most valuable commodity in the medieval world: gold. Mali produced about half of the world's gold supply during this period, but it wasn't just gold. Mali also controlled the salt trade, and in the scorching Sahara Desert, salt was quite literally worth its weight in gold. Mansa Musa became the 9th emperor of Mali around 1312. The title En Mansa means a king of kings or emperor. And Musa didn't just inherit wealth, he expanded it. Under his rule, the Mali Empire grew to cover nearly 500,000 square miles, including parts of modern-day Mali, Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, Niger, Nigeria, Chad, and Mauritania. The empire's capital, Timbuktu, became one of the great centers of learning in the world. Scholars came from across Africa, the Middle East, and beyond to study at its universities. The city had vast libraries filled with manuscripts on mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and law. While much of Europe couldn't read, Timbuktu was a beacon of education and culture. But Mansa Musa wanted more than just wealth and power. He was a devout Muslim, and in 1324, he decided to make the pilgrimage to Mecca, a journey of nearly 4,000 miles across the Sahara Desert and through Egypt. This wasn't going to be an ordinary pilgrimage. This was going to be the most extravagant journey the world had ever seen. In 1324, Mansa Musa set out for Mecca with an entourage that defied belief. Historical accounts say he traveled with 60,000 people. Among them were soldiers, servants, officials, griots, storytellers, and merchants. He brought 12,000 personal servants, all dressed in silk and Persian brocade. He had 80 camels, each carrying between 50 and 300 pounds of pure gold dust. Let that sink in. Thousands of pounds of gold, just for the journey. As the massive caravan crossed the Sahara, word spread ahead of them. By the time Mansa Musa reached Cairo in July 1324, the entire city turned out to witness his arrival. The Mamluk Sultan of Egypt came to greet him personally, and what happened next became the stuff of legend. Mansa Musa was so generous and so mind-bogglingly wealthy that he gave gold to everyone he met. He gave gold to officials, to scholars, to random people on the street. He donated massive amounts to mosques and charitable causes. He paid for everything in gold. He tipped servants with gold nuggets the size of eggs, and he completely destroyed Cairo's economy. The sudden influx of gold devalued the metal so severely that it caused massive inflation. The price of goods skyrocketed. Gold, which had been precious, became almost common. According to contemporary accounts, it took Cairo more than 12 years to recover from Mansa Musa's generosity. On his way back from Mecca, Mansa Musa realized what he'd done. So what did he do? He borrowed gold from Egyptian moneylenders at high interest rates to remove some of the excess from circulation and try to stabilize the economy. Think about that. He was so rich that he had to borrow money to fix the economy he'd broken by being too generous. His pilgrimage became famous across 3 continents. European mapmakers began drawing Mali on their maps, with Mansa Musa depicted sitting on a throne, holding a golden scepter and a nugget of gold. The 1375 Catalan Atlas shows him prominently, with the inscription, "This Negro lord is called Musa Mali, lord of the Negroes of Guinea. So abundant is the gold which is found in his country, that he is the richest and most noble king in all the land." But Mansa Musa wasn't just about displaying wealth. He was a nation builder. On his pilgrimage, he met poets, scholars, and architects. He brought many of them back to Mali, including the Andalusian architect Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, who would go on to design some of Mali's most iconic buildings. Mansa Musa commissioned the construction of mosques and madrasas, Islamic schools, throughout his empire. The most famous was the Jingwareber Mosque in Timbuktu, which still stands today, over 700 years later. It was built with mud bricks and timber from the Sahara, demonstrating the sophisticated architectural techniques of the region. He turned Timbuktu into an intellectual powerhouse. The Sankore University became one of the largest universities in the world at the time, with enrollment reaching 25,000 students. Scholars came from as far as Baghdad and Damascus to teach and study. The libraries contained hundreds of thousands of manuscripts on every subject imaginable. Mansa Musa established Timbuktu, Gao, and Jenne as major centers of trade and culture. He created a stable government, promoted education, and ensured the safety of trade routes across the Sahara. Merchants knew they could travel through Mali without being robbed or harassed. The emperor's reach was long, and his justice was swift. Under his rule, Mali became synonymous with wealth, learning, and power. It was a golden age in every sense of the word. Mansa Musa died around 1337, after ruling for approximately 25 years. His son, Magan, succeeded him, but he didn't have his father's vision or strength. The empire began to decline after Musa's death, eventually fragmenting due to civil wars and invasions. But the legend of Mansa Musa endured. So how rich was he really? Modern economists have tried to calculate his wealth, and the estimates are staggering. Some place his net worth at around $400 billion in today's money. Others say it's impossible to calculate because his wealth was so vast, it distorted medieval economies. He controlled half the world's gold supply. He owned entire salt mines. He ruled over vast territories rich in resources. For comparison, the richest person alive today has a net worth of around $250 billion. Mansa Musa might have been twice as wealthy, or more. Yet his story was largely forgotten outside of Africa for centuries. Why? Partly because European historians ignored African achievements. Partly because the Mali Empire eventually fell, and with it, much of the written record was lost or destroyed. But in recent years, Mansa Musa's story has been rediscovered. He's recognized not just as the richest person in history, but as a sophisticated ruler who used his wealth to build institutions, promote learning, and connect his empire to the wider Islamic world. Mansa Musa's story challenges everything we think we know about medieval Africa. While Europe was emerging from the Dark Ages, West Africa had thriving empires, universities, and trade networks. They had wealth that made European kings look poor by comparison. Mansa Musa wasn't just rich. He was a visionary who understood that true wealth isn't just about gold. It's about knowledge, culture, and legacy. He built universities that outlasted his empire. He commissioned buildings that still stand today. He put Africa on the map, literally. The next time someone tells you that Africa had no history before colonization, tell them about the man who was so rich he broke Egypt's economy just by passing through. Tell them about the king who turned Timbuktu into one of the world's great centers of learning. Tell them about Mansa Musa, because some stories are too important to forget.